Oh, there, everyone. Welcome aboard. Today, we're diving into the world of maritime security. Windward's just released their latest report, and it's like having a treasure map to navigate choppy waters. We're going to sift through this report, extract the most valuable insights, and figure out what they mean for you.
Right. It's really a fascinating report. It highlights 9 distinct trends that are shaping the industry.
9 major trends. That's a lot.
It is.
But for today's deep dive, let's narrow our focus a bit. Let's set our sights on 3 key areas: undersea cables, choke points, and Houthi attacks. Of course, we'll weave in the broader geopolitical context as we go.
Those are definitely hot-button issues right now, and you can't really talk about them without addressing geopolitical instability. We're seeing shifting alliances, America First policies, and of course the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. It's creating huge waves that are impacting the entire maritime world.
Yeah, it really feels like watching those tectonic plates shift, doesn't it? And the aftershocks are rippling through global trade routes and shipping patterns.
Exactly. And those disruptions, well, they create opportunities for certain actors out there, those looking to, capitalize on the situation.
Take advantage.
Right. The report highlights a good example of this, the surge of vessels with ties to China in Canadian waters.
Really?
Yeah. It's likely a response to the trade friction between the U.S. and Canada.
So we're seeing these potential realignments in global trade happening right in front of us. And that raises a really big question for our listeners. How could these shifting alliances impact your operational costs and logistical planning? I mean, this is something you need to think about right now.
Absolutely. And it's all tied to the rise of something we call shadow fleets.
Shadow fleets, what are those?
Well, initially, these vessels were designed to just skirt around sanctions, but the report reveals their activities have become, well, a lot more audacious. We're now talking about intelligence gathering and even sabotage of undersea cables. It's getting harder to separate sanctions enforcement from actual security threats.
So these shadow fleets, they're not just bending the rules, they're potentially disrupting critical infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's huge. That affects everyone.
It is. The maritime industry is facing a two-pronged challenge here: disruptions from both state and non-state actors.
Right. Our listeners need to think about how to factor both of those elements into their risk assessments. It's not just one or the other.
Couldn't agree more. The report suggests a multi-layered approach. You've got to think about the geopolitical motivations of state-sponsored actors and the economic incentives driving those illicit activities. It's not always clear-cut.
Makes sense. And the report mentioned a concerning statistic.
Oh, yes. 4 significant attacks on undersea cables and pipelines have happened in just the last few months.
I was thinking about that. One of those involved a cable in the Baltic Sea. I think they suspected Russia, right?
That's the one. And these incidents really highlight how vulnerable those undersea cables are. I mean, think about it. They're the nervous system of global communication and finance, a major disruption. We're talking financial transactions halted, global communications disrupted, internet access down, the impact on everyone. Businesses, governments, individuals.
It doesn't even bear thinking about. But it's important to remember these threats aren't hypothetical. They're real. They could disrupt our everyday lives in a big way. So we've got these geopolitical tensions, we've got shadow fleets, we've got increasingly brazen attacks. I think it's time to shift our focus to another pressure point: maritime choke points.
Good idea. Those geographic bottlenecks, they're like the arteries of global trade. And the report shows they're more vulnerable than ever. Just look at the Panama Canal. Capacity issues because of the drought and the potential threat of those Houthi attacks in the Red Sea.
What should our listeners who operate in this environment be doing to prepare?
Well, imagine your cargo, vital for your business, just stalled for weeks because a canal's closed. What's your backup plan? Diversifying shipping routes, thinking about alternative transportation, securing good insurance policies, and of course, staying up to date on what's happening geopolitically in these areas.
All excellent points, but let's talk about those Houthi attacks. That's a big concern for any vessel in the Red Sea.
It is. And the report goes into detail about their tactics. They use a mix of drones, missiles. They've even tried to cut those undersea cables. It's a classic example of what we call hybrid warfare.
Combining traditional and asymmetric approaches.
Precisely. And their actions are having a direct impact. They're disrupting civilian infrastructure and making things riskier for everyone operating in the region. The report connects those Houthi actions to that wider geopolitical picture. Iranian support, U.S. and U.K. involvement, the possibility of escalation. It's a tense situation, to say the least, and the maritime industry is caught right in the middle.
Sound like Navigating the Red Sea these days requires more than just traditional maritime expertise.
No.
You need to understand the complex geopolitics at play.
Absolutely. And pair that understanding with proactive risk management. Are you monitoring the latest intelligence? Do you have solid security protocols for your vessels and your crew? Are you coordinating with international partners? Are you using technology to mitigate these evolving risks? These are questions every maritime operator needs to ask themselves now.
So much to think about.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by all this talk of threats and vulnerabilities, but I want to emphasize that the maritime industry is not powerless. We have tools at our disposal and technological advancements giving us some hope.
Technology, huh? How can tech help us navigate this increasingly complex world?
Well, governments and industry stakeholders are increasingly turning to unmanned assets. Drones, satellites, underwater sensors, you name it. They're using them for maritime domain awareness. It's about monitoring these vast ocean spaces more effectively. And the data they gather, when analyzed properly, can give us a much clearer picture of what's actually happening out there. That means we can detect threats proactively.
So it's about harnessing data to anticipate and mitigate risks. Sounds great, but how do we make sense of all that information? I mean, these systems generate a ton of data.
That's where AI comes in. Artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms can sort through mountains of data. They can identify patterns and flag anything that looks unusual, things that we might miss otherwise. Imagine a system that's constantly analyzing vessel behavior. It can spot deviations from normal routes or speeds, which could point to smuggling or sanctions evasion.
It's like having a digital detective on the case, always watching for suspicious activity.
That's a good way to put it. And this kind of behavioral analytics can be applied not just to individual vessels, but to entire fleets. That helps us identify those broader trends and potential threats.
That's pretty impressive. But it sounds like staying ahead of these threats requires a serious investment in technology and expertise.
It does. The report stresses the need for continuous innovation and collaboration. Governments are working to improve information sharing, both between agencies and with international partners. Industry stakeholders are teaming up with tech companies to develop these cutting-edge solutions.
So everyone's working together. It's good to see that.
We've spent this episode exploring these major trends that are shaping the future of maritime security. But now it's time to shift gears. We've got all this knowledge, but what can you actually do with it? How can our listeners, the maritime operators out there, take this information and use it to navigate these turbulent waters, fortify their operations, make them more resilient? The first thing to remember is that we're not just dealing with these isolated incidents. Everything's connected. The geopolitical tensions are fueling the rise of those shadow fleets. Those technological vulnerabilities are attracting attacks on those undersea cables. It's a system.
You get chain reaction.
It is. So you can't just address these things in isolation. You need a holistic approach, one that considers how all these forces interact.
Okay, so where do you even begin?
Well, start by taking a good hard look at your own operations. Assess those vulnerabilities. Ask yourself, where are you most exposed to these emerging threats? Do your shipping routes go through those volatile choke points? How much do you rely on those undersea cables for your communication and data transfer?
All right, so you've identified those pressure points. What next?
You've got to develop a solid risk management strategy. And that means having contingency plans for a range of different scenarios. What happens if the Suez Canal gets blocked again? Are there alternative routes you can use? What if a key undersea cable gets severed? Do you have backup communication systems?
Those are some serious questions. It sounds like preparation is key. That's how you mitigate the impact of these unpredictable events.
Couldn't agree more. But preparation isn't just about planning. It's about investing in technology. Technology that's going to enhance your situational awareness and your security posture.
You talked about those AI-powered tools earlier. How can those be used to actually bolster maritime security?
AI can do some pretty amazing things. It can analyze huge amounts of data from all sorts of sources, satellite imagery, AIS signals, weather patterns, to pinpoint potential threats and anomalies. That can help you anticipate disruptions, optimize your routes, even predict areas of heightened risk.
It's like having this virtual intelligence officer constantly monitoring the entire global maritime landscape and feeding you real-time insights.
Exactly. And with those insights, you can make smarter decisions, adjust your operations as needed, and proactively protect your assets and your crew.
So we've got risk assessment, contingency planning, technological integration. What else is important for a strong maritime security strategy?
Collaboration. Don't underestimate the power of working together. Connect with industry associations, join those information sharing platforms, build relationships with security experts and technology providers. That collective intelligence network can be invaluable.
Sharing information, coordinating efforts, learning from each other's experiences. In this interconnected world, we really are stronger together, aren't we?
We are, and never stop learning. Stay informed about new threats, new technology, new geopolitical developments. Go to conferences, read those industry reports, keep training. Make sure you're always equipped with the knowledge and the tools you need to navigate this landscape. It's constantly changing.
It's a never-ending process of adaptation and evolution.
It is. But that's the nature of the maritime industry, isn't it? Resilience, adaptability, those are the qualities that have always defined us. And in this era of unprecedented challenges, those qualities are more important than ever.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. From geopolitical tensions to technological solutions, it's been quite a journey. What's the one key message you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
I'd say this. The maritime industry is facing some really complex and evolving threats, but by being proactive, by being informed, by working together, we can not only mitigate those risks, but also unlock new opportunities for growth and innovation.
Well said. Remember, folks, knowledge is power and preparedness is key. Thanks for joining us on this maritime security voyage. May your future journeys be smooth sailing.